Our entire digital world is built on code. And let's be honest, that code is never, ever perfect. Every tiny flaw, every little oversight is like a potential unlocked door for a cyber attack. So the big question is, how do we find these hidden weaknesses before the bad guys do? Well, today we're going to dive into exactly that, the critical process of vulnerability management, and a really powerful open source tool that helps automate the hunt, called OpenVAS. I want you to imagine your company's network as this huge digital fortress. You spent all this time building high walls, you've posted guards, but what about the stuff you can't see? The hidden cracks in the foundation, maybe a forgotten tunnel underneath. Well, those are your vulnerabilities. And believe me, attackers are out there probing for them 24/7. Real security isn't just about having strong walls. It's about constantly searching for those weak spots and fixing them before anyone else gets a chance to. Okay, so what is this unseen threat, really? We're talking about cyber vulnerabilities, and it's not always some dramatic movie-style software bug. Sometimes it's as simple as a server that's been misconfigured, or an employee who's still using a default password, or even a security update that just never got installed. Each one of those is an unlocked door in your fortress, just waiting for someone to casually walk right through. And that brings us to this whole idea of vulnerability management. Now, this is not a one-and-done kind of fix. It's a continuous cycle, a loop that really has 4 key parts. First, you have to identify the weaknesses across your whole network. Then you evaluate how bad they are. Is this a tiny crack in the wall or a giant gaping hole? Next, you treat the issue, which usually means patching the flaw. And finally, you report on what you did to make sure the process is actually working. It's not just a good idea, it's an absolutely essential security loop. So how in the world are you supposed to manage this constant cycle? Manually checking every single system is, well, it's pretty much impossible. What you need is an automated tool, something that can patrol your digital walls for you. And that, my friends, is exactly where OpenVAS comes into the picture. OpenVAS, which is short for Open Vulnerability Assessment System, is this amazing, comprehensive, and this part is super important, open source tool. Its entire job is to automate the search for those weak spots in your network, your systems, your applications, you name it. It systematically tests all your defenses, trying to find those little cracks before an attacker can. So why do I keep saying open source is such a game changer here? Well, unlike a lot of proprietary tools that can be super expensive and kind of rigid, OpenVAS gives you a ton of flexibility. But its real secret weapon is its massive community-updated library of what are called network vulnerability tests, or NVTs. Think of these as a giant, constantly growing encyclopedia of all the latest threats. Because there's a whole global community adding new ones all the time, OpenVAS learns to spot brand new threats almost the second they appear. All right, so we get what OpenVAS is and why it's so powerful. But how does it actually work? What does it do? Let's do a quick, high-level walkthrough of the scanning process. And don't worry, we're going to focus on the concepts, not the complicated command line stuff. The whole process really breaks down into 4 logical stages. Step 1 is just getting the tool installed and ready to go. Step 2 is all about defining your targets. What are you actually scanning? Is it a web server, a database, or maybe your entire network? Third, you configure the scan itself, deciding how deep you want it to go. And then, finally, the most critical part, you get the report and start digging into what it found. And this brings us to the payoff, because a scan is totally useless if you can't understand the results, right? This is where OpenVAS really shines. It's designed to turn a mountain of raw data into intelligence you can actually act on. So let's take a look at what a scan result actually tells you. Now, instead of just dumping a long, overwhelming list of problems on you, OpenVAS does something incredibly smart. It categorizes every single vulnerability by its severity, high, medium, or low. And this is absolutely crucial for knowing where to start. It lets your security teams immediately focus on the most critical threats, the ones that pose a clear and present danger to your digital fortress. And when you dig into the report, the level of detail is amazing. For every single vulnerability, you get a clear description of what the problem is and exactly how an attacker could exploit it. But it doesn't just stop there. It also gives you a recommended fix. It gives your team a direct, actionable path to patching that weakness. So it's not just pointing out problems, it's actually handing you the solutions. Okay, so you have the report, you know the risks, you've even got a list of recommended fixes. You're done, right? Well, not so fast. A single scan is just a snapshot in time. The final and honestly the most important step is to turn all this knowledge into a sustainable, long-term security strategy. The really crucial thing to remember is that this is a cycle, not a one-off event. Best practice means you're doing regular, scheduled scans to catch anything new. You have to keep OpenVAS and its threat database updated. You should always prioritize your fixes based on risk. And finally, you want to integrate OpenVAS with your other security tools to create a defense strategy that covers all your bases. There's a quote from our source material that just hits the nail on the head. It says that in our world of constantly evolving threats, having a reliable vulnerability management tool isn't just beneficial, it's essential. Ultimately, this whole process is the difference between a fortress with strong, well-maintained walls and one that's unknowingly crumbling from the inside. So the only question left to ask is, how well do you really know your walls?